What's up, boys?
Hey, what's up?
Take 2 on episode 4.
Jinx.
Well, welcome back to the No Quarter Podcast, episode 4. We are sitting here in the Sims Shot studio.
Yep.
At Sim Shop Meridian. Shows brought to you guys by Sim Shop Meridian and shopblackrifle.com. What's up, dudes?
What's up? Let's do this again.
Yeah. we had some camera issues yet again.
We're actually looking for a new producer.
Yeah, we need an intern. So if anybody is looking for an intern job,
Zero pay.
Pays in free training and a huge discount at the Boise Black Rifle, we need somebody to come in and run this equipment for us.
Yeah.
Josh is like, fuck.
No, I'm, dude.
Or if you guys have some input on camera equipment, because the cameras that we bought apparently are supposed to be the best for podcasting, and they're dog shit.
We figured out the equipment we need. It's just, a few $100 each.
And we need a bunch.
Yeah.
Send me the links. Done with this shit.
Episode 4. We had a bit of a hiccup last week with content getting out there, but we figured that out. All of us work. Is your eye twitching? It's like twitching.
This one?
Yeah, it's twitching hella bad.
so check it out.
I'm like looking at him. He's like,
tangent. So my eye is twitching hard, and it's been doing that since probably like the first half year of opening SimShot. And so I was finally like, maybe I'm dying.
Like, are you okay?
Stress.
Maybe I'm fucking dying.
Owning
So I
a
Google
business.
it, and there's a name for it, and it's literally just like lack of sleep, caffeine intake, stress, and anxiety. And I'm like, fuck, all of those boxes are checked for me.
Wait, is that the name? Lack of stress, caffeine intake?
Might as well be. Yeah. So it's like apparently drinking 2 huge coffees a day, sleeping 4 hours a night, and then being stressed as fuck all the time is bad for my
Having young kids screaming all the time.
Yeah.
And then starting a podcast.
And then starting a podcast with equipment,
the
we
equipment
can't get
just
to stay
doesn't
on
work.
all the time.
So as soon as the cameras go down, my eyes just like fluttering now because it wasn't twitching 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
This is new.
Yeah.
So I'm stressed about something.
Yeah. Well, we had some, I'm going to cover it. I read the entire email verbatim on take 1. I'm going to go between the lines a little bit more. We had a buddy of mine who is a federal law enforcement officer. He responded, on episode 2.5, when you were in Hawaii, we were talking about that shooting debrief where that dude had a scorpion. He was carrying a scorpion appendix. There was a lady officer who was kind of behind her vehicle taking cover, and then a male officer. The body cam video footage for her was basically her engaging this guy, one-handed, very poorly built grip in a neighborhood with terrible backdrop. It was just houses. And we were commenting on the grip. I mean, yeah, really everything, but the grip, the tactics in the grip specifically.
That's probably
you saw it, right?
Yeah, I watched the episode.
Yeah. So he had responded, and again, it's a long email, and just for the sake of brevity, I'm gonna paraphrase. But essentially, he said he went to training through FLETC. I think it was the Federal Law Enforcement something training center. They do 3 or 4 months of very intensive sim training. They go through all kinds of scenario training. Jeremy's over there yawning again.
We take a shot every time I yawn.
I got yeah. Somebody said we should make a drinking show or a drinking game out of Jeremy's yawning. I'm like, that's a pretty good idea.
Yep.
But anyways, they go through all these intensive sims, and after that, it all stops. The training basically goes away. They end up doing quarterly reviews and then their annual check off for their pistol.
Yeah, just the qualifications and stuff.
Right. And so he was a military / federal law enforcement officer. So he was enlisted for a while working as a Fed. Now he's a civilian working as a normal Fed. He was like, well, and then I went and did, pre-workup training, and they revisit all the tactical stuff. But the reality is that you're straight up law enforcement officers, whether they be local, county, state, federal, their time that is allocated to training post being a rookie going through the academy or whatever versus when they're operational and in the field and they have caseloads and they have court and they have all this stuff is nil.
Yeah.
And the requirements are almost
pretty
nothing.
standard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty standard in law enforcement. I mean, unless you're on SWAT, like we talked before, or
K9 or whatever. Yeah, you just
or
don't
a
have
special
the
unit where you guys can This guy.
So he's trying to hide his
You
eye.
all right, buddy?
I'm gonna get him an eye patch.
Well, no, if you're
Fuck
not
you,
in one of
Dan
those,
Crenshaw.
those special units, I think those units get taken a little bit more serious. I'm not saying more serious,
Right.
but
They
I
get
think they
allocated
get
more time and
a little bit more time
Yeah.
to do their thing.
Well, and from my perspective, and I think all of us kind of share the same opinion. If you're going to be a law enforcement officer on any level and in our communities and have a reasonable expectation of having to engage a bad guy,
Yeah.
you need to be able to handle yourself.
No, and I think, if I call 911, right, and the house is on fire, I want a competent fireman to show up and put the fucking fire out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I am
But the wet
call
stuff on the hot
911
stuff.
and I've got a child choking and I can't remedy that ourselves,
Right.
I'm hoping a paramedic will show up and do their
Yeah.
thing,
And
a
know what they're
competent one
doing.
that know
Yeah.
what they're doing. And I think that has to do law enforcement. If you need them in a mall shooting, you need them to be prepared
Right.
and ready
Switched
and
on.
able to take on that threat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think training in that aspect, it should be just as important. And I know we're probably going to get a little bit of hate. It's not that we're hating on law enforcement at all. It's just the training.
No, I think they're ill-equipped. I think they're
ill-equipped.
underfunded,
Yeah.
ill-equipped. I think we talked about this. I mean, most agencies, my bet would be they give enough training to alleviate whatever type of liability
Yeah.
their lawyers are saying. Hey, at this point, your liability drops.
And so what we're just for context, if you didn't watch the 2.5 episode, they were doing a breakdown on a law enforcement shooting.
Right.
And obviously we're sitting in the SimShot studio. This is a training facility, so that everybody knows what SimShot is.
Yeah.
Jeromy is a certified trainer, does CCW classes, has a simulator where you can actually come in and shoot, simulated rounds in any scenario based, if it's going to be a flat range, static range, or if you want to actually do some law enforcement scenarios
or even concealed carry.
Carry scenarios, you could do that here. So we're talking about breakdown that they did when I was in Hawaii, episode 2.5. If you guys want to go back and look at that, and just the tactics that officer was using,
or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Lack thereof.
I don't think that was a tactic at all.
Yeah, the dude was pretty dialed. I
He
mean,
handled the shit.
Yeah.
He straight up did.
My big thing is look, if you're gonna let rounds fly, you have to be willing to be accountable for them, not just legally, because at some point you're gonna be held accountable to them legally.
Sure.
But being held accountable legally doesn't bring back little Johnny.
Life. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you've got rounds that are flying all over the place and your backdrop is residential homes, it's a problem.
Wasn't there was no, I don't know what the call, I don't remember what the call was.
I think it was a disturbance call.
But wasn't she more focused on the cell phone?
Well, yeah,
Like
I think
she was yelling-
they were trying to get him to he had a phone
Put
in
the
his hand.
cell phone down, and it just escalated and kept escalating and escalating.
Put your phone down. He's like, you mean the scorpion right here?
It was
You
pretty
mean this
wild. He had
weapon?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm all for cops shooting fucking dirtbags, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. But
Yeah.
the tactics and everything and the optics need to be, they need to be
needs to be
dialed.
They need to be
right.
sound,
They
and
need
you
to
need
be
to
sound.
train. But
Yeah.
departments also, whereas I'm comfortable saying individuals have an obligation if you're going to choose that career field, that path, that
Yeah.
calling, whatever you want to call it. If you're going to have the duty to protect,
Yeah.
then you need to have some personal obligation that goes above and beyond
100%.
what your department may be willing to give you. The other side of that is it is unacceptable for us as citizens to accept law enforcement agencies that are not prioritizing training. I want you to train your officers to de-escalate. I want them to be able to have the
Absolutely.
conversations. I want them to be able to talk somebody off the ledge, talk them down, talk them out of shooting themselves, talk them out of shooting their girlfriend. I want that stuff.
Yep.
If you can resolve every situation non-violently, awesome.
That's the preferred method.
It's a net positive every single time.
Yeah.
I won't argue that ever. But we all know that we live in the real world, and
Yeah.
that's not the reality every time. Sometimes you walk up to a traffic stop, and instead of getting a "Hi, officer, how's it going today?"
yeah.
you're going
get
to catch
bang, bang.
blasts in the face, and you
Yeah.
need to be able to respond effectively and with prejudice. And the reality is we have departments that aren't prioritizing that nearly to the degree
Yeah.
that should be considered acceptable by we the people who are the governed. You know what I mean? We are governed by offering consent to the government in theory, right? That's how it's supposed to be. well, then we need to be also holding our agencies accountable
100%.
to a higher level of training.
Well, I think a lot of people, and I can't, not every one of them, because I've taken a lot of training classes with a lot of law enforcement officers that are paying good money to be in those classes when their departments aren't reimbursing them. They need to take it a little bit more serious. The day that they strap on that badge, that gun belt, and don't just view it as
it's not a job, it's a lifestyle.
Tool belt. Yeah, exactly.
And if you're not living the lifestyle, I mean, he talked about, like, we've all seen the 400-pound CHP officers who are on the side of the road, and that if a dude not runs away, but like walks briskly away, that officer is not giving chase.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
Well, they have big unions, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
keep those dudes around.
Well, I mean, just like, do you want me to be the responding officer in a foot race?
Drop a few pounds, yeah.
Right now, no.
Not right now.
I don't want to run shit.
Not with that fucking twitchy eye of yours.
So drop a few. Yeah, no kidding, man. That's a stank eye, bro.
I'm working.
He's been He's got the twitchy eye.
I'm getting an eye patch for next episode.
I'll be the local one-eyed guy.
So
all right, but yeah, no, I mean, I think it's also important too. I mean, if civilians truly give a shit about the level of training their officers are having, make the phone calls.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Write the emails. Talk to the chief of police.
Yeah.
Right. Call them. Ask them, what are your training? Like, what does a shooting qualification look like? What kind of de-escalation tactics are you giving these guys? They're not going to withhold the information.
Right.
Most police departments will be like, this is what we do.
Right.
This is it. And if it's unsatisfactory, ask the question.
Yep.
Well, there's all kinds of organizations. I was involved in an organization. I helped raise a lot of money for Foothills Canine Association. Yeah. So, or when I was on the Placer County Sheriff's Council, where we was a board of directors, and I was on the board of directors, and we raised money for the shortfalls of the department funding. So we made sure that every deputy at the department had a camera on their taser. So if they didn't have a camera on the taser couldn't be deployed in the field. And we would also make sure that every supervisor had a pepper ball blaster in the car. And
like
we paid for those. We would fund it through that organization. But when I was also involved in help fundraising for the Foothills Canine Association, we would make sure that every single dog had a bulletproof vest.
Fuck yeah.
Awesome.
Or stab-proof vest, depending on the role of
like
the dog.
They catch blades more than bullets, I think.
Yeah. So there should be, community. The community, if they cared, they would get involved in those things.
Totally.
Instead of trying to defund the police, they would actually be helping. Our tax dollars obviously should be paying for that, but the once it goes into the general fund, that money goes to all kinds of things.
And I'm all for, if you want to advocate for a more visible budget, if you want the budget to be public record, I would imagine most police budgets probably are.
Yeah.
But having some more visibility in that, cool. Or having more control over, hey, we as a community, and there may be different community priorities, community to community.
Sure.
But saying, hey, we really want you guys to focus this year on training, for psychological, like if you're going to go out to psychological calls, we want you guys to focus this year on training this. And maybe next year it's training tactics. And maybe, you know what I mean? And having some more insight as to what tools they're being given. But the fact that, especially with firearms, like you guys are walking around in the general public with deadly weapons. If there's going to be a standard for an individual who chooses to conceal carry,
bingo,
then there needs to be a standard.
And I think there is. I think that, not to say that they're held less accountable than what we would be concealed carrying if we were to get in a shooting or a use of force where we're defending ourselves.
The assumption might be different, though.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. And
we'll have been expected to have known better.
I'm not going to name the department, but I know a department within a couple of years ago, they were having such bad issues with driving. They had to actually send every single one of the officers
through EVOC again
for reverse driving. In reverse, because they're just plowing into shit in reverse.
What happened? I crashed my
and
car.
A lot of that is, obviously anybody that's ever driven a Ford Explorer, they have a lot of blind spots.
Totally.
My wife hated driving ours because it just had tons of blind spots.
They also have
in
reverse cameras, though.
But they do, exactly.
Not when they're covered by the CAD.
But when
That's true.
yeah, that is true. But usually they're in the mirror though. Now I think on theirs.
Okay.
But they had to make every officer go through EVOC again for backing up. So
it's like be going through EVOC annually or biannually or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
I just think the training with firearms, because now everybody's got a body cam. There's cell phone videos. They're everywhere. I think people are a little bit more the public for, oh my God, he just shot somebody.
Well, and there's so much public outcry for gun control.
Yeah.
You know, it's low hanging fruit for the people who want this is the dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But it needs to be, I think the training actually needs to be elevated.
And I am,
it's just like,
for
you know,
sure.
I'm not talking about the military badly at all, but you are in the Marines. You're a Marine. Everybody is a rifleman. Right. Not everybody is getting the, you know, expert badge.
Yeah, but the military is trained differently. If you were to send an infantry geez, I'm like having strokes today. If you were to send
looking at his eye.
Right, I know it's a bad day. If you were to send an infantry platoon into a civilian community and tell them to police the community, you would have if people aren't complying, they're going to get shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Listen to me now.
Right, exactly. It's a different type of training.
I think we can all agree, you know, when we're going to do those debriefs, obviously none of us are law enforcement.
Right.
And we're, you know,
should mention that.
Armchair
quarterbacking them. But it's perception, right? Perception is reality.
Yeah.
So they need better training. They really do, especially in that situation. That lady, she had a terrible grip. I think her command presence was terrible. Nobody was listening to her commands.
Let's put down the phone.
Yeah, and just I think she escalated things more than it needed. I mean,
that
kind of stuff. Judo sucked.
It's absolutely.
Yeah,
just screaming, you know, put down the effing phone. Like
you'll have to go back and watch
right, wrong, or indifferent. There are ways to communicate with people, and sometimes, and I don't know what that guy's mental state was. He may have been in a state where he wasn't even capable.
Did he actually die? Did he die?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
He wasn't even capable of. He may have been in a state where he wasn't capable of processing the orders that he was being given. Maybe he was pharmacologically, you know, under some kind of influence. My point is I don't know all of the facts of the case to be able to comment on whether or not, if she had better verbal skills, would it have been effective? Maybe.
But her gun handling skills were terrible.
What I can say definitively is that when she engaged him, her gun handling skills were awful.
Yeah.
And that's a training problem. It's not it's a training under stress problem. It's a training with weapons manipulation problem.
Well, fundamentals.
It's a fundamentals. It's a training.
Number one thing
problem.
is your grip.
Yeah, grip is king. But you also, I mean, when you hit that level of stress, like, oh shit, this is actually what I think it is, you're gonna revert back to
your lowest
level of training. Yeah. And that's proofs in the pudding right there.
Absolutely.
I do think that our law enforcement should be held to the highest standard, but not just because tax dollars.
Right.
But because also, like, you know, be good at your job.
And take pride in it.
And show up and go home to your families at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, and that's super important, you know? And
So I think we're all going to agree that we're always going to touch on the training aspect because that's what we're passionate about, right? Like we can critique these things, but I think as this podcast, it develops I think we always go back to these training because it's what we're surrounded in. But we've got another episode that we are kind of excited about that's coming.
So we do have a cool, we just had a meeting actually.
We did. Right before we started this podcast, we had a meeting and I don't know did we ever touch on it before?
So not here.
No.
But, and lay out the basics because I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing a substantial amount of due diligence regarding the facts of the story.
Yeah.
But lay out the, you know, just the boilerplate, give the elevator pitch.
We have a friend of the show that actually built these end tables. He's got a young daughter. It was 12 years old, going to a public school here in Idaho, in Caldwell, Idaho, of all places that something like this could happen. We entrust, as you know, parents, our kids to go to a public school to get an education, and the educators to actually protect our kids while they're away from us.
And you're going to get a bunch of people on here that are going to be like, well, don't trust the public schools. Look, the reality is there are more people in this country than not that have to rely on public schools.
Not everybody can go to a private school.
So whereas we may be able to agree philosophically that, you know, you want to homeschool, you want a private school, is that better? Yes, no, maybe. I've got my own opinions on it, but the reality is that public schools are here.
They ain't going nowhere.
And they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So to preface what Rob's about to say, it's our job to hold these schools accountable.
And this is going to be a good episode. It's going to be emotional, but we collectively are going to do our due diligence. We are going to go down to the police department. We're going to go down to the county records. We're going to go to the DA's office, and we're going to FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, get all of the facts around this case, because there was a conviction, a very light conviction of this teacher.
Yeah, super weak.
But this teacher was holding fight clubs in the classroom.
Yeah, and that's not an exaggeration.
This is real life.
Like, what did he say? Gish was like, the teacher at some point said, "Move the desks."
Yep.
And we'll let you guys fight, and you guys can film it as long as you don't put my face on it. That's a loose paraphrase, but that was what was communicated to us.
So in this
is a 12-year-old girl.
Dirtbag wasn't an accredited teacher. He just was a walk-on
employee
of the school that was filling in as a substitute teacher while the real teachers were out or doing whatever it was.
Yep.
But he was a full-time employee of that school. It was a junior high school in Canyon County, city of Caldwell.
Middle school, junior high, right?
Holding fight clubs.
Yeah. And his last name was Nipple.
No. Areola.
So we are going to dive deep into that. It's going to be a very emotional episode. Yeah. I'm sure there's going to be some heated words. The family is actually filing a lawsuit against the school district. So we'll probably have the attorney on at some point, but we are definitely going to have the mother and father. And we are going to do our due diligence and kind of be investigative reporters and get to the bottom of this and get all the facts so that we can shed light on this. So this never actually happens again, because there's a lot of untruth that was put out there by the school district that we're going to shed some light on.
Yeah, I mean, based off of where we're at right now, it's probably going to be at least 2, probably 3 episodes. One's going to be a more raw interview. The next is going to be a more like chronological debrief of everything we're able to find. What we're expecting is that there was the charges that were brought to this guy were light.
Very light.
We think, based off of what we're being told, that what we're going to find is that for whatever reason, whether it be politically motivated or whatever else, this was kind of swept under the rug a little bit too much.
Time.
So
yeah. And there was a lot of fancy wordsmithing, from the police department, like heavy-handed wordsmithing from the chief of police in Caldwell, and then a lot of
claims,
wordsmithing and claims that were never followed through with, were actually lies, but they were good for the public to hear. And we're going to expose those, because anybody that is entrusting your child to the public school system and then this happens, people need to be held accountable.
Well, and we're going to lean on the people we know. I mean, we have connections through you guys, through people in political positions here. We've got friends in law enforcement. We're going to lean on people to try to get the truth of this situation brought out.
This never happens again, because this is absolutely insanity.
I mean, none of us have kids in the school system, but it's an irrelevant point. The reality. Oh, do you do?
Yeah, both my my oldest
in Caldwell?
Kids no, in public school, but he's in Meridian.
Right, but my point being is, regardless of what district it is, what school system it is, as members of our community, as members of our our society here in general, our state, the schools exist. They're not going anywhere, and it is our job as men in our community to stand up and to defend the children and to hold the people that are appointed to care for them accountable if they're going to neglect their job.
Outside of the incident itself, right? Because we're all emotionally tied to that family. We know
we've
the
all
family.
got kids. We've got, well, you got grandkids.
Outside of that, right? The accountability and the way the school district treated this should never, ever happen again.
Never. No, it's a fucking joke.
And I think if we can shed just a little bit of light with just our little bit of viewership, anybody that's listening, hopefully this will resonate and it will shed some light where maybe people will start getting involved in the community a little bit more and get to your school board meetings. I mean, we learned a lot in 2020 when all these kids were home and they were doing all this Zoom. It shed a lot of light, but I think there is a lot more light that needs to be shed.
Totally agree.
On incidents like this so that none of this ever happens again. And the DA's office went completely light on that guy.
Oh,
and
they're getting a new DA is what you were saying, right?
Yeah. if the elections go well,
Right.
Got it.
in November, I think we'll have a new DA that will be a little bit more tough on crime than letting this dude out with just probation. I mean, this guy, honestly,
unsupervised.
unsupervised probation. Yeah, it's awesome. So we can make our assumptions, but if you want to read a book by its cover, this kid looks like he could be a pedophile, and maybe there might be more things there that we uncover. I'd like to see what other issues this guy had, because you just don't go from, oh, I'm going to be a substitute teacher and an educator, which he's really not because he's not even accredited, to being a fight
club
promoting
coordinator.
fights in class.
Yeah.
So I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into this.
No, I'm excited to get the facts. I'm excited to I'm brokenhearted about the situation, but I'm excited.
I mean, it's a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah,
dude, it's terrible.
Too. I know that family.
But if we can burn this down and light some of this corruption on fire, then I will.
Well, there needs to be, they've been trying to push this school choice hard here in Idaho, and that needs to be something. Those tax dollars should go with the children. It shouldn't be stuck at public school. Yeah. Public school is just cesspool, in my opinion. And not everybody can afford to go to.
And there's good educators.
There are good educators.
There's people that really care, but we're talking about such a massive wheel.
Well, how does somebody like that get through? And we don't know this. This is just what we were told today in the meeting. There was no background check done on this individual.
Right.
I think to work on a school, though, you have to have.
I think even as a
check.
coach,
I thought so too.
As well. So we're going to dig into those. We're not going to take that for verbatim, but I trust in that individual that gave us that information, and we'll figure this out as we uncover this and we peel back the onion.
Yep.
The layers of this onion, and I don't want any violence or anything like that to come to this gentleman, this monster, but. We're going to put his name out there, and we're not going to dox the dude. We're not going to say where he works or where he lives, but people need to know.
There needs to Josh said we couldn't.
No, there needs to be. If you do these things to kids,
you need to be.
There needs to be a registry, and you're going to be on that motherfucker.
Yeah, kids are off limits.
Yeah, kids are off limits. You can't touch kids, man.
No.
Yeah,
that's it.
No.
Yeah. So we're going to dive deep in that. I'm excited about that episode. It's going to be awesome.
Hyped.
Yeah, I hope we can do some good with it. I think we're going to. I hope
so. We know enough people where. Hopefully somebody will want to get involved. Yeah. And we hold people accountable, dude. This is that's our if we can do any good, with the podcast. I know it's fun for us and we're just in here talking shit a lot of the times, but when situations like this and people reach out to us, like I got reached out to last night. I mean, you guys were willing, let's cut that podcast right now.
Yeah, but
today.
you're right.
And
let's take our time and do it the right way.
Let's get the facts. Let's do the Freedom of Information Act FOIAs. Let's get people involved.
Yeah.
Let's at least talk with the family, figure out which route they want to go, because this is very personal.
Yeah.
But if they feel like this got swept under the rug.
Yeah.
And so I think it's time for them to tell their story.
Yep. No, I'm honored that they approached us to do it, and hopefully we can do some good by it. So
I do have a development already about that.
Really?
Did you get an email response?
I got an email response that the email listed on cityofcaldwell.org for the person that's in charge of releasing public record is not an email.
Oh, so it was you got like a mailer demon?
Yep, I got kickback on it.
That's awesome.
A little strange though, right? I mean,
interesting. Yeah. So as that develops, as we're gonna put the story together in the right way, we're gonna release it in a couple of episodes, and so just keep an eye out for it. It'll be good. I feel weird saying it'll be good, but we're gonna do our best to make it as informative, as meaningful as possible. So
yeah. I mean, like we told you guys in the beginning when we started this podcast. We have certain points that we want to. This is going to evolve as these podcast episodes go. We have no like
direction.
Right. This is just us talking, and we're just jamming in here, and we're telling you about us. And like I said earlier, we're going to get these questions. We're going to get these answers back to you guys.
Yep.
If you guys want us to touch on a topic again, put it in the comments or DM us like these folks did, and we'll talk about it
for sure.
And it turns out if you fuck with our friends, we'll make a podcast about it.
Absolutely.
So don't fuck with us.
Absolutely. Did you guys? Okay, so we were talking a little bit about last night about what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch the video, the interview with Tim Kennedy and the other cat, John Lovell?
Yes.
Oh no, I didn't.
I did.
You didn't? You said you didn't watch the video.
No, I don't honestly watch anything from John Lovell.
Okay, that's fine.
So
is there just because you don't?
You know, honestly, I just can't keep up with everyone, man.
That's
There's just so many.
I don't watch much. Tim Kennedy's been kind of a hot topic over the years.
Yeah.
You went back and found the interview that he did with Lance Armstrong.
Yes.
And
I think a lot of that was taken out of context, just to be honest. I think they
So you think that the community, the gun community crucified him, was a little more hard on him than they needed to be.
So, just like anybody, myself included, all of us in this room, this right here, right? We're being shown what they want to show you.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm not a big fan of some of the things that he says or advocates for.
So,
and we're talking about Tim Kennedy here,
right?
But I went back and watched that episode, and
they paraphrase.
I think, and you watched it recently. He says something along the lines of he thinks gun control is a massive solution, which I definitely see why he could have said that in the context of who he was talking to. But the thing that people really get him on is something along the lines of he didn't think 18-year-olds should have access to ARs or something along those lines, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously he was being interviewed on a very liberal, somebody that doesn't like guns at all.
Right.
I mean, Lance Armstrong is not a gun guy, doesn't like guns. He's made that clear. So Tim Kennedy got caught in a I gotcha type moment, I think. And then they just cut it up, obviously.
Yeah. He probably was trying to self-preserve, but at the same time also like bridge a gap of like, I don't want to just be like, you're fucking wrong.
I'm gonna just go on the record right now.
Yeah.
That I'm not a big fan of gun control at all on any measure. If you're 18 and you're an adult, you should be able to buy whatever gun that you'd like.
Yep.
Until you can prove otherwise that you shouldn't own a firearm. And I'm just going to go on record right now as an FFL holder. I've sold thousands and thousands and thousands of guns over the 16 years that I've been doing this. Yep. And I can tell you that not one gun has ever been used in a violent crime that I am privy to, which I'm sure that I would have been privy to that already because everybody would have been down. Now, do we get gun traces? We get them every single day.
Sure.
So guns either stolen or it could have been used in a crime at some point. But I've never had, except for one incident, and we can get into that, where the Secret Service actually showed up at our doorstep in Sacramento on an issue that was serious, but completely unavoidable. Yeah. Nothing that we did was against the law. There's nothing that we could have done to prevent what this guy was doing with that firearm, and we can touch on that later. But I'm going to go on record saying that there is no gun control that is currently on the books that would prevent, like,
that you view as effective.
Correct.
Okay.
So
no, I think it's a fair disclaimer. So in the recent interview that he did with John Lovell, and I think he's the Warrior Poet Society is his. Okay. He basically said, look, I was trying to talk to him and I was trying to meet him where he was at. I was trying to meet a guy that I was talking to, trying to find common ground, trying to use language that made him more comfortable engaging in the conversation. Now, in theory,
terrible idea.
In theory, I can see why that you might try to do that. But some of the statements that he made were unacceptable. Now, in the new interview, he says something along the lines of, I think that he at first says, I'm very pro 2A, I'm pro gun, I want everybody
to own
have
a gun
guns.
store.
Right. Yeah. He kind of doubles down on the, I'm a gun guy. I teach people how to use guns. He's got the whole sheepdog, whatever. And he says, but I do think that there are some gun laws on the books that make sense. And I had to kind of step back and think to myself, because the libertarian constitutionalist in me, I'm like, all gun laws are infringements.
Yep.
Right. But I also like to challenge how I think about certain topics so that I can either one, grow, or two, better defend my opinions.
Yeah, double down.
I'm trying to approach this from a devil's advocate perspective.
Sure.
And the one area that I could, or the scenario in which I could say that statement makes some sense to me, is when you take into consideration our criminal justice system and how flawed it is. I mean, even just talking to Gish about that situation, there are people who are known criminals, violent criminals and otherwise, who have, in theory, paid their debt to society, but are no different from who they are.
Right.
I can understand the theory of, well, not allowing for those people to regain their rights to have firearms in any capacity. There is some sense there.
Yeah.
The other side of that coin is, but when you give the government the ability to start dictating who is safe and who isn't, it is an incredibly slippery slope.
Yep.
Very slippery, dude. I don't like it
There's
all.
one thing that I have a real hard time with, and it's domestic violence.
Right.
Right? Misdemeanor domestic violence, you lose your rights to own a gun forever. Doesn't matter what state you're in. Now, there's a lot of situations where two people will argue, the cops will get called by a neighbor, they will come out, maybe the wife or the man had slapped one another, or the man had tried to put up his hand or put up his arm, grab the wife's hand, and now there's physical contact between the two. Dude or the woman goes to jail for domestic violence, gets convicted of that.
Yeah.
They can never own a firearm again. That's complete bullshit, in my opinion. Now, there are certain situations. I think pedophiles, rapists, things like that should never own a gun because a pedophile can never be rehabilitated ever. So they should just be off with.
Well, I'm not sure they should be allowed to breathe, but
off to the wood chipper they go.
Yeah, there's only one
different
cure for
conversation.
pedophilia.
So I think people.
It's cheap though.
It is cheap.
A mutual combat situation, two gentlemen, two young male adults,
Gentlemen's duel.
two females.
I challenge you.
They get in a confrontation, and one of them gets a charge of assault and battery, and it could be a felony or it could be a misdemeanor that it would prohibit you from owning a firearm. Once you've completed any class, any of your time,
Right.
I think that you should be able to own firearms.
So there should be a road to redemption. What you're saying is
100%.
there should be a road to redemption for some.
Violent crime where you are preying on somebody and you use a weapon or other.
Right.
No.
So I think
there should be exclusions to.
So this gets to the heart of my comment. What we're talking about are gun laws.
Yeah.
And so can we reasonably say, and I'm posing the question, not just to us, but also to our listeners, viewers. Can we reasonably say that there are some reasonable regulations on ownership of firearms that are in existence? Specifically, coming back to what you said, if you rape somebody,
done.
If you touch a kid,
done.
I have a really hard time reconciling that devout constitutionalist, all regulation is infringement. I have a hard time reconciling that with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And therein lies some of the nuance. There is some gray. It doesn't mean that
the 4473 in itself, right? California, legal drugs are legal recreationally.
Right.
Especially marijuana.
Yeah.
It's illegal federally. You know what I mean? So
and firearms are regulated federally.
Correct.
Right.
So I mean, I'll pose it to you. I mean, because you're a pretty hardcore constitutionalist. Like, how do you reconcile those things? What are your thoughts on what we're talking about?
And I'm not just saying from a business owner, take me out of the scenario of selling firearms,
but
your rights, like everybody has the right to self-protection. And that could be a bat, it could be a fire, whatever you choose, could be a knife.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think everybody has the right.
And I also, before you respond, Jeromy, the other side of this is I don't think that the regulation of putting a law in the books that says pedophiles or violent criminals shouldn't have guns, I don't believe that's going to prevent them from having guns. What I do think, though, is that there is some value in public endorsement of X. Are we going to publicly endorse that pedophiles and violent criminals should have their rights back to have guns? I don't know that that's a good idea.
No.
But how do you, and then this is what I'll say, how do you respond as a hardcore constitutionalist?
Yeah.
How do you reconcile those ideas?
Man, I think that truthfully, when it comes to anyone who harms women or children, you no longer have the Constitution available to you. You are non-human anymore. You've lost your right to that. If you're going to take from someone that level of, if you're going to inflict that level of harm to someone, whether it be a woman or child, I think that at that juncture, you lose your rights.
So can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
To both of you?
Yeah.
Do you believe that the Constitution affords us the rights that it states, or does it simply enumerate the rights that are God-given, or for my atheistic friends, that are given by virtue of birth, by the virtue of existing? You have these rights, and the Constitution does nothing but recognize them legally. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying?
I think so.
So, like, for example, the Constitution enumerates, it basically creates a legal precedent that recognizes my right to free speech.
Sure.
It doesn't afford, like the theory would be, it doesn't afford that right to me. I can say what I want when I want.
Even if you were convicted.
Even
felon.
if I'm convicted to it, nobody's going to take that right from me.
Yeah,
it is
right.
mine by natural law.
Yeah.
The right to defend myself is mine by natural law. The Constitution simply enumerates it and recognizes it in law, right? So my clarifying question would be, is does the Constitution, if you're saying you no longer have access to the Constitution, so then does the Constitution afford the rights, or does it simply recognize them?
I think I'm with you on it recognizes them, right? Like I can get down with that completely. The hard part is this. Obviously, when I talk about gun ownership with people, generally I say it's our civic duty. Every American should have a gun.
Okay.
Do I truly think a pedophile should ever be able to own a firearm? No. Right? And it really comes down to,
maybe we should just declassify them as humans, and that just solves the definition problem altogether. I'm just saying.
Good with that. I think they should go in the wood chipper. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's hard. I mean, it's impossible to reason with me about anything when it comes to, so like, obviously, like,
bro, this is going to hit a topic like this episode's going to get people fired up.
And good, because I want us to think about it critically.
A lot of different angles, like red flag laws, which I think are completely bullshit.
Right.
And we can touch on that too, because I've had personal friends and family that have been caught up in that scheme, and we deal with it in California every single day at the shop.
Yeah.
But
it's
a fine line.
It is. So here's the thing. Do I think the government has any right at all to say shit about what anyone does? Fuck no. Right? Hard no.
Okay.
Period.
There's no but.
No but. However,
so there is a but.
There's not a but. There's a however. However, the government seems to be lenient on pedophiles when it comes to our judicial system, which is completely flawed. Officers, even if they're against pedophilia and stuff, they can't do much.
These wheels are spinning
right
now.
They can't. They arrest them. They do their job. They arrest them, and then after that, the police officers are like, "Cool, this guy's gonna go back out on the fucking streets." Right. So, I mean, my honest to God opinion is that like civilians should truly handle that situation.
Well, just to be fair, the police officer doesn't have a. They're just arresting.
Right.
That's
what I'm saying.
System that's
that's what I'm saying.
taking
the
over.
Police can do their job.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Ideally, the police do their job, and then after that, it's out of their hands, and they're just like, "Fuck, man, like we can't help."
So really, this is my problem, because in theory, like if you go back to the founding of our government, the founding of our Constitution, the writing of our Constitution, in theory, the government was established by the people,
right,
for the people,
right.
So what that means to me is that we. And you can scale this locally, city, county, state, federal, whatever. We are offering consent of governance, meaning I offer consent to be governed by the rules of our land, because I understand what they do. The problem is that now our representative republic has been hijacked, and you are no longer able to dictate nearly as easily the laws that are governing over you. And so now what we have is a scenario where we have very evil people who are being reestablished into society, and they are being afforded all of the, in theory, they could be afforded all of the same rights.
Right.
So having laws that are they functionally going to be effective? Maybe not. Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. Right. But there is still something to be said about we the people endorsing these violent types of people, whether or not we believe that endorsement is going to be taken advantage of or not. By us saying, if you serve your time as a convicted pedophile and you are released back into society, you should be afforded your full rights. Because there's a lot of gun guys who say that, like hardcore 2A, whatever. If you've done your time, you've done your time and you owe it. And there's a spectrum, right, of types of crime. But if you're going to follow that to the logical conclusion, what you're saying is that we should be affording all of these people who have served their time and their punishment and giving them their rights back. And I'm not certain I'm comfortable with society endorsing that class of criminal.
I mean, no, I agree with you. Like, we're in agreement here on that.
Okay.
100%. I just,
there we go.
There is just,
here we go.
And you're a fascist. You don't believe in the 2A. You're just a sellout cuck.
No, man. I don't agree with the statement. I agree with you not being comfortable saying that someone who has served their time should be afforded those rights again. Like,
right.
I agree with you on that. I don't think that they should under certain circumstances. I think there is a spectrum. You know, if you go to prison for DUI and they charge you with a felony DUI because you crashed a car or something, should you never have a gun again? No, that's bullshit. It's a DUI, right? Like, you made a critical error, yes.
Like you said, there's a spectrum. There's a relative crime.
Right.
What if somebody was killed in that crash?
I mean,
was it negligence?
So here,
was it
let's just do this. There's a guy I follow, Ian Smith. Everybody knows, 2020 he had the gyms, whatnot, and he really took a hard line on "fuck you, I'm not closing my gym,"
right?
This, that, and the other. And then people, hey, this dude's a convicted felon. Should we even listen to what he has to say? The guy's done a lot of great things for the community. He's a stand-up business guy, from what I have understood.
He hates everyone now.
Now
he just fucking hates everyone.
But he had a DUI and there was a passenger involved, or I think he got in a car accident and somebody died. Is that something where we're like, hey, that guy's paid his debt to society. He's done good with his life ever since. Is he allowed to own a gun?
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
for me, that guy, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say yes. In my opinion, it's going to probably be unpopular, but
why?
I don't think that he wasn't out there trying to run people down with the car.
Right. If he was out there
malicious,
driving through parades on purpose.
Right.
Yes. No.
That's different.
Right. I agree.
But the other side of it too is he also did decide to get behind a wheel drunk.
He did.
You know what I mean?
Which is negligence.
Right. And so they're
he just did make good decisions at that point in time.
And so I guess what I'm getting at is this isn't, I don't think this is as binary of a conversation, because we can do these what ifs all day long.
Yeah,
I mean, we literally could talk endlessly.
I think that you should be able to petition your government, right, for your rights. You should be able to get that. You should be able to go back to court, show a time period that you've made great decisions.
Well, and this is
what you have done.
Yeah.
You should be able to get that conviction reduced. Then you should be able to get that conviction expunged, and then you should be able to apply and take this to court. And
this is why a non-biased judicial system is so imperative.
Yes.
To protecting what our government should be, is that you can have laws on the books and you may be arrested for laws. And some of those arrests may be infringements on your rights. Absolutely.
Because they put a lot of bad people back out on the streets
all the time
with very little supervision.
Right.
With very little accountability for their actions. And we see it every single day. Like, how could that guy be back out on the street?
Well, look at what Tukey Williams, he was the founder of the Crips. He's responsible for forming one of the largest organized gangs on U.S. soil. And when he was set for death penalty, people lost their minds. He's a good guy now. He's a Christian now.
That doesn't mean you're not held accountable for your actions.
That's what I'm saying.
So, and this is my point is, and this also goes back to the responsibility of the citizen to be informed, to be well read, to understand what your rights are, to understand what the laws
But
are.
then
Because when you're called upon to be in a jury and serve your civic duty, you are now responsible to be a non-bias party that is quite literally called to cast judgment on one of your peers in society. And that is a massive responsibility that people take far too lightly.
And also people are
I can tell you a situation. Sorry.
No, it's fine. They're just, it's never gonna fucking happen.
I can tell you a situation where my wife was just recently called for jury duty, and she was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to do this. And I was like, babe, what better time in your life, right? You're retired. You stay at home, right? You take care of our house, our dogs, our chickens. Like, you take care of the house. That's a huge responsibility. That's a big relief off of me. But this is a bigger calling. This is a bigger responsibility. Yeah. You could go in there with what you know right now. You own a business. You've been through so much in your life. You have daughters. Like, you could go and actually save somebody from a prison sentence, or you could go and put some real bad person away. Guess what she was on? Any wild guess?
The stabbing from Moscow.
A fucking pedophile.
Oh.
And guess what? They released her. When they found out that she had 2 daughters, they released her off the jury.
Yeah.
I was super bummed. I was like,
fear of bias.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But they're oh man, see that, and that's this is where it gets me, man. The fact that there's laws in place that protect pedophiles from civilians is fucking insanity to me. Like, that's insanity.
And this guy was multiple offenses. Like, this wasn't his first rodeo.
He should be unalived.
Lives right here in Caldwell.
Yeah. If you go on the registry, what's really crazy is I went on the registry map to look for all the sex offenders in my area. There was like legitimately none in my area, but like outside of my immediate, there was a bunch, and I was like, oh shit. But it's like there's no. There can't be a gray area for this.
Yeah.
Like, it can't be an accepted thing where it's like, oh well, we have a jury in this and this. It's like, no.
But then you got to go like. We have these multi-layers of who's an adult, right? You can't rent a car unless you're 25 years old. You can't buy a handgun unless you're 21 years old. You can't drink unless you're 21. But damn, you could sign your life away to the military at 18 or 17 years old with apparent consent.
You can gamble your money away and bury yourself in debt at 18 too.
Yeah.
Dude, I agree. You can do all of these things. Honestly, we have conflicting laws.
Yeah.
Age of consent, age of service, age of drinking, age of smoking, age of porn, age of we have so many conflicting laws. And what I go back to is the slippery slope. Is any level of offering consent for more governance worth what it could potentially turn into? We were talking yesterday about CPS.
Yeah.
Dude, in theory,
crazy,
right? You hear Child Protective Services, and you even think, like, even from our perspective, how much massive amounts of good can be done by an institution like that.
Sure.
But also how much havoc and damage can be inflicted by somebody who just wants to, they're pissed off because you didn't do whatever.
Yeah.
And, CPS, I heard this guy, he was beating the shit out of his kids the other night. Now they have a case against you and they have due diligence to follow.
Yeah.
You're telling me that can't be weaponized? Something that is intended for immense amounts of good can be weaponized so rapidly.
Yeah. I have a great CPS story.
You want to send it?
Sure.
Or is that another time?
No, we can get into it. Because I agree. It goes into what you're saying, and I'll make it as brief as possible. My son's school did call CPS on us, and CPS showed up that day. They interviewed my son that day before they even called us to tell us they called CPS on us. Long story short, last year or year before last during the Super Bowl, I had my phone in my hand and I was flicking it back and forth like, I'll show the camera like this. And my son, during the Super Bowl halftime, thought it'd be funny to pull his pants down and smack his ass in front of all of our neighbors. So me flicked my phone and I released it, and it ended up actually hitting him in the eye. And I wasn't trying to hit him in the eye. I was trying to hit him in the butt with it. And I thought it'd be funny. Not as like a disciplinary, but like, you're going to show your ass. Like, I'm going to smack your little butt, whatever.
Sure.
And
and how old is he?
He was like 8.
Like in context,
7,
like
yeah,
everybody gets where you're at.
Yeah,
like
and
that, there's
so the phone hit him in the corner of the eye, and I literally like.
That's one of those dad moments where you're like, oh shit.
As soon as it left, as soon as it left my hand, I was already like flying through the air to get to him to like grab him to make sure he was okay. As soon as he moved his hand away, I saw a little mouse growing, and I was like, oh shit. I brought him into the room, ice pack immediately. I was checking his orbital right away, and I was like, fuck, I hit him right on the orbital. Like, I think we should take him to urgent care to get x-rays just in case because of where it hit him and how quickly it swelled. I was like hysterical in tears for inconsolable, like the only human in my world that I am not supposed to harm are my children, and I fucking just lit my kid's face up on accident with a phone. So the guilt was immense, right? I was like freaking out. Took him to the urgent care, did x-rays, and he was in great spirits. He was just like, I'm not mad, Dad, it's fine. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm sorry. I didn't, oh my God. So I was fine, everything was fine, and I told the urgent care exactly what happened. Like, I was not beating around the bush at all. I was like, I flicked my phone, hit him in the face. It was horrible. Holy shit. And
I was trying to hit him in the ass.
Yeah. And I was like, even like, it was not a disciplinary thing at all. Like it was, and so the doctor I actually was dealing with was like, oh my God, like shit like this happens all the time.
They have so much discretion, and honestly, a lot of it comes down to how the parents react.
Yeah. Totally.
Like, the parent, like you'll see it in dictation, the parent was appropriately concerned.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big deal.
Oh, when you rush your kid to urgent care because you think something's wrong, it's like, obviously I care. And,
especially right after you did something that could potentially paint you in a bad light.
I wasn't even worried about I wasn't worried about CPS. So I was worried about my kid's face, man. And so we do that.
Yeah, you don't want him to turn out looking like you. That's true.
Yeah, right. Ugly. Fortunately, he's a gorgeous little boy. My wife helped a lot with that.
That's fair.
But
my kids are the same way.
So anyway, so the doctor was just like, listen, you're all good. Like, it happens. That was my hand.
Oh, okay.
It's all good. Like, it's okay, Dad. Calm down. He's fine. He's gonna have a nasty black eye, but he's fine.
Yeah.
And my son the whole time's like, so, like, are we gonna go get McDonald's or what? Like,
he was totally fine. What am I getting out of this, Pops?
He was totally fine. When they did the x-rays on him the whole time, he was like, dude, this is super cool. Are they gonna see my brain? I'm like, probably. And he's like, sick. Like, he was totally unfazed.
Yeah.
And so we do the right thing. We email his teacher, hey, this is what happened. We went to the doctor. He's okay. But just so you know, when he shows back up tomorrow, he's probably gonna have like a shiner on his eyes. And the teacher's like, oh my God, thanks for letting us know. Like, it's no big deal. Like, thanks for letting me know. So at least I'm not like, oh my God, what happened to your face? And so like damn near a week goes by, and he's walking through the hallway with this nasty black eye that's turned purple because it's kind of on the healing side.
Somebody asked him what happened.
And the principal saw him, was just like, what happened? And he's like, oh, and I always told him, always be honest, right?
Yeah.
Like, be honest about what happened. He's like, oh, my dad hit me in the face with his phone. And I'm like, of course. So, and she's a mandated reporter. Now,
yep, absolutely.
She made the phone call to CPS right away. CPS came down, the SRO for the school went and had the meeting, and they asked him what happened. And then the principal called me, and she was, hey, my wife donates time at the school and stuff. So she's there on Fridays to help and stuff. And so they know who she is. They call, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. We have to report because your son has a bruise. We don't think that Maverick's abused, but we had no choice. We have to follow protocol.
And like I've had to file reports. Like, we have the ability. They'll ask us for clarifying questions. Like, okay, you're a mandated reporter. Like, what were your thoughts behind it? Did you feel like this was nefarious? Do you feel like this was out of, or does this? We have some discretion in how we articulate the. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, totally. So. And so she called and gave us a heads up. She was super transparent. Was like, hey, I had no choice. Like,
yeah,
but I want you to know this is what's going on. And I was like, okay, has anyone talked to Maverick? And she said, yeah, we already had them come down and interview him and stuff. We do that before we notified you. And
so crazy.
And my first question right away, and the only thing that really mattered at the point is like, is Maverick okay? Like, you guys are bringing him into a place separate from everyone else. You're asking him a lot of questions. Like, is he alarmed? Is he alert? Is he like, what's going on here? Like, I don't give a shit about any of the CPS stuff. Like, are you guys making my son uncomfortable because I don't like that he's interviewed? I don't care. If they would have said, Dad, can we step in and talk to him alone? I'd be like, yes, absolutely. So it was one of those things where I was more concerned about, I don't want him to think he's in trouble.
Yeah. The crazy thing is like how quickly how quickly your rights as a parent are put on hold, because guess what? If they want to interview him without you present, they do. They're gonna.
They do. So then I was like, okay, well, what happens next? The principal said the CPS lady is going to call you after the interview and schedule time to come meet you. And she called and she said, like, hey, I'm at the school now. If you guys are available, like I can come by and come to your house and we'll sit down and talk. So they came to our house like 20 minutes later and, we didn't clean up or anything. Our house was normal, just like lived in house. And they came in and the school resource officer came in and I've met him before and he was like, oh, hey, and I was just like, hey man, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Like, come on in. And we were just like, yeah, whatever you need from us, whatever you need to see. And within like a 10, 15-minute conversation, they were right away. She's just like, this is unsubstantiated. We're going to close this case out today.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry. And then I was like, can you just call me and let me know that it's closed out when it's done? And so she called me at the end of the day. She's like, hey, everything's closed out. Thank you for meeting with us. Like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, if you need anything, call me. Cause I know that it's traumatizing. And honestly, my wife was like, you should go see a fucking therapist, dude. Cause you're like not okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, I harmed my kid and people thought I hurt my kid, and the flip side, what kind of kept me on like the up and up about the situation was there are kids that desperately do need CPS to go check on them. And though I, at the time, was angry, I was like, fuck the school, fuck the principal, because they think I would actually abuse my child, who's my life.
They don't know you.
But yeah, exactly. They don't know me. And you know what, though? It was such a swift action that it was one of those things where I was like, man, like, my first thought was, in California, would it happen that fast for a kid who needs it? And also, there are kids out here that truly are being abused that do need it. So the fact that a teacher actually cares enough to make that call, even though they think it's probably nothing, and CPS shows up that rapidly to handle a situation and investigate, like, that gave me, honestly, a lot of comfort, because I think it is a necessary thing to make sure children have that protection.
This is that gray.
Yeah.
A force that can be used for good, can also be mechanized for chaos and mayhem.
Totally.
But here's the other side of that coin. There are some parents out there that need to lose their rights as parents.
Yes.
And so there's going to be people that are going to say, well, not the government. Okay, I'll entertain the conversation, but who? The church? Well, what if I don't agree with that church?
Right.
Who? The local PD? Well, okay, that's just a branch of the government. So who, you know what I mean? There are some of these institutions that do, dude, I on one hand, I'm like, nope, I could advocate easily for them being abolished in its entirety. But on the other hand, I'm like, you know what? Because of where we are at in society, I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah.
Because though I know I can handle my own, and if I found out that you were beating your kid, I'd come lay it on you.
Fuck yeah.
But I can't police the neighbor. I'm not the police.
Right.
I can't police the people I don't know. I
kind of have a hard time that they pulled your son without your permission.
That honestly was probably the most
tough.
In my mind, that's a no.
I agree with you, but what happens? But there is that kid.
But they could
who goes home
planting things on the child, and I've seen so many stories and read so many stories where they're like filling the kid with fucking bullshit
ideas, leading questions.
Exactly.
And I agree with you 1,000%. I also agree.
I fucking hate the government, to be honest.
I'm the same. I'm the same. But
I don't trust them.
My point is I'm conflicted. There's some gray.
There is.
There's far less gray than most people would have you believe, but there is some gray.
Yeah.
And if there's some gray there, then is there some gray with regulation of firearms? Now, whether or not we believe that regulation will be effective, I don't even know that I would agree that it's right. Like I said at the beginning, dude, I'm huge into playing devil's advocate. If I don't challenge my own ideas and I can't defend my own ideas to myself, then I certainly can't defend them to other people.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So playing devil's advocate, if there's some gray with some good that can happen that may justify a system like that gave you some iota of comfort, right?
Yeah, I mean, not for me specifically,
but
it was terrifying. But they gave me comfort. The idea that there might be a kid that really needs help,
right?
There are lots of those kids.
There are a lot of them.
And to think our CPS is actually out here actively working to do that, like that made me feel good.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But are they busy just like going in houses like mine where it's very clearly a
and
nice
for
house.
all the guys that are going to be in the comment and gals that are going to be in the comments that are going to say, well, it's up to parents. But there are some that we've got. We're at the sim shot range, so we've got clients going in. So if you guys hear anything in the background, but there are some parents out there that don't love their kids. They don't care for their kids. They are neglecting their kids. They're beating the shit out of their kids. They're sexually abusing their kids. They're not feeding them. They're not sheltering them. Those kids need defenders as well.
Yeah.
And we don't always have the purview or the visibility. Yeah. And so, dude, it's one of those things. Like I understand a statement like Kennedy made that there are some good laws on the books. I understand it. I'm not at the point where I agree with it. I'm wrestling back and forth with the idea, but I don't think that he is as anti-gun as the internet would paint him to be.
I wouldn't say that he's anti-gun.
So I looked into that because after the podcast where you said Kennedy was pretty anti-rifle and stuff, I looked into it, man, and really he's kind of like, if you're not a piece of shit, have a gun.
Well, and like the other side of it too is we're all on some level, and I would imagine if we had him sitting here, he would probably agree to this. Like we're all idiots on some level. Like we're just a bunch of knuckle draggers. Like we're not scholars and like we're pretty sound and savvy, and we can
take this soundbite and piece it together and paint us in the bad light.
Well, it's not even about editing. I might step on my dick some days and say something that is completely out of it comes off in a way that is completely out of line with what I believe. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay, that's fine. What do my actions tell you? Hold me accountable. Do my words matter? Absolutely. But hold me accountable by my actions. And I'll say this. Now, has he had a couple of interviews where he's maybe tried to justify away a really bad interview that he had a handful of years ago? Yeah. I honestly, like, should he just own, like, look, guys, I did this interview. I kind of fucked up. Like, I said some things in a way where I thought I was going to find some common ground. And I said things in a way that came off completely wrong.
Sometimes that's hard to do.
And he just needs to eat the crow.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
It is.
But I think he needs to eat the crow. He messed up when he talked to Armstrong.
Yeah,
I agree.
He messed up. He said some things. Looking at his actions and the things that he does for the community and the people that he trains, judging him by his actions. I don't know. I don't think he's an anti-gun dude.
I can honestly say,
I think he's a human. I think he messed up.
Yeah, no, totally. And I can honestly say, if you truly think Tim Kennedy is not a gun guy, you're fucking crazy.
It's like people that were hating on Black Rifle Coffee, the CEO.
Evan?
Oh, Matt Best.
Yeah, no, like
Evan Haver,
because he donated to Tulsi, and like, oh, he's an anti-gun. This, I'm like, judge him by his actions. Do you really think that dude is anti-gun? Do you really think that? I don't. You know what I mean? Do I think he's a savior? No, he's just a dude that owns a company that makes cool content.
Just stop giving money to the Dims.
You know, whatever.
He needs to do that.
Whatever, but that's his right as an American.
100%.
You know what I mean? And and he can have ideas that I don't disagree with. That doesn't make him not on my team.
Yeah.
There's stuff that like we've talked about. I mean, and we've gone back and forth in conversations that we haven't put on the podcast yet. Like where we don't see eye to eye on stuff. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Doesn't bother me at all.
Not at all. Do I think that you're not on my team? No.
Nope.
Not even a little bit. You know what I mean?
Except for when he has an eye twitch.
Oh yeah, the eye twitch is freaking me out a little bit.
I'll try to only have one cup of coffee before a podcast.
So I don't know, man. I just think that I'd like to summarize, I guess. I just think that there in the conversation there is some nuance. Now, whether or not that nuance would reflect into laws that are effective.
Well, I don't think
so.
From experience at the gun counter level, they pick and choose on what laws they want to actually uphold.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So when you're going through the questionnaire on the 4473,
yeah.
If we feel like there is a straw purchase possibly going down, we've trained our guys the do's and the don'ts and what to look for and just stop the sale right then. But there are things on the back end where you're supposed to contact your local law enforcement and they don't do anything about it at all.
Yeah.
So what do you think? How do I want to phrase this question? I think that there could be regulation and then there can be store owner discretion.
Yeah.
I think that the store owner discretion should be more stringent than the regulation on the book.
Sure.
Meaning
Well, it stops with us,
right
at the counter,
right. And so
if we don't feel
so
comfortable,
would you would agree with that? If you're like, you know what, dude, like
100%, we do it actually all the time.
You may be legally able to buy from me, but I'm not going to sell to you. I want you to go somewhere else by all means, but I'm not going to sell you here.
I mean, that happens all the time.
How do you communicate that? How do you?
It's really on the employee, right? So you have to give them enough leeway to make that decision. There's times where an employee is like, I don't like this guy. Like something just it's not right. Right. Be like, bro, we know who that customer is.
Yeah.
Like he might be a little off, but he's not a criminal.
Yeah.
And we've never had any issues with him.
Well, if that was the case, these guys would never sell me guns.
Right, exactly. So
I'm always in there saying crazy shit.
No, but we had a situation, and I touched on it earlier when the Secret Service ended up showing up at Sacramento Black Rifle. We had a customer that had purchased numerous firearms over the years from us, lots of ammunition, lots of magazines, like any other customer.
Yep.
Bought some body armor, some things of that nature. I get a random call. I'm sitting at my desk here in Boise from a number that I don't recognize. I don't answer it. I don't answer any number that I don't recognize. And I send it to voicemail. It calls again. I send it to voicemail again. They end up leaving a message for me, and it was some ATF agent in some field office that wanted to get some information on a customer that we had sold a gun to. Well, that's not the proper channel. So I get back on the phone with him because this guy's calling the store down there. They're not giving him any information. So now he wants to talk to the owner. So they were basically trying to do a trace on a firearm outside of the tracing center, which I can't do that. That would be like me giving your information to anybody that just asked for it. One, I didn't know who the guy was. He could have been anybody. I have no credentials. I have nothing. And they got super, super upset with me, and they sent a Secret Service agent down to the Sacramento store location. So what happened, this gentleman bought a firearm from us, bought 1,000 rounds of 223 or 5.56, and he bought 10 magazines. And he had a manifesto, apparently, this is what we find out later, he had a manifesto, and he was traveling across the country to go kill Fauci, because he had a grievance.
Like Dr. Anthony
yes.
Fauci? Oh,
yes.
Jesus.
And so the ATF, the local police, the freaking Secret Service, everybody gets involved, and they end up showing up down there at Sacramento. And I said, listen, this all sounds great, because they're like whipping their badges around, but without you guys going through the National Tracing Center and actually serving us a warrant outside of the National Tracing Center on that firearm, I can't help you. Like, I want to help you, but I don't trust you, one. And two, I'm not just going to give out customers' information. So the National Tracing Center actually traced the firearm. Then obviously we have to give them all the information. Right. So take this a step further. Once we already had that information to the ATF, the Secret Service agent at Sacramento wanted that paperwork. Well, I can't give it to him. Like they wanted the hard copies of it. And I'm like, hey, dude, chain of custody, those files cannot leave the office. Damn. And I'm not making you copies of them. You need to get them from the ATF. Yep. Well, what happened? He asked to speak to another manager at the store. So my store manager left the office. I have him on video because in every office there's video and audio. He took the file. So when my manager comes back, the file's missing, and he has the file, and it won't give it back to him. So we actually had to contact our attorney. Our attorney called him and said, hey, you will return that or else the paperwork. So there's situations, there's laws, right, on the books that they want to enforce sometimes, that they don't want to enforce other times. And in that scenario, that agent, was a bad agent in my opinion. And then the ATF trying to bully us and trying to give up that information without going through the proper channels, I thought was completely bullshit. And so that's the only time ever that we've ever had a situation in that scenario where they're like, you're going to give us the information or else. And I was like, no, we're not going to give it if it's not through the proper channels. But going back to these laws, right, like people having their rights, that dude didn't do anything wrong prior to this incident. And then now all of a sudden he is on his way to kill Anthony Fauci across the country from Sacramento. And you can look this up. It's all
crazy.
It was in the news. They didn't out us as a store. Thank goodness they didn't like get it some hit piece on us. But yeah, that did happen. And so I don't know. There's checks and balances when they want to use them. And for most of the time, it's for bad, in my opinion. That's just me, though.
Well, it's also like...
I think, you know, does somebody have the right to have a conviction expunged?
Sure.
In certain circumstances? I believe so.
Yes.
I think it should be your right. If you've paid your debt to society, you're not a pedophile, you're not out committing other crimes, you're not a violent person, I think that you should be able to...
It should be situational.
It should be situational. And I don't think it should just be a blanket no.
Yeah. And here's the thing is, I think that there's some perspective that constitutionalists are anarchists, and I'm not. I quite enjoy the rule of law. I quite enjoy the protections that having a local police department offers, right? Now, is there a trade-off? Yeah, I think on some level. And am I willing to, if I have to, am I willing to take all of the responsibility? Absolutely, right? But because we live in a society, I guess my point is that we don't live in that optimal situation where we get to, I don't know how to articulate it. You know what I mean? Like where we get to just say no laws because
it's fucking chaos.
You know what I mean?
We can't have that. I mean, last night I was watching the new series Fallout.
Okay.
It used to be a video game. It's post-apocalyptic.
Got it.
And it's like that is what's in that. That is the world without laws.
Got it.
That is the world without local law enforcement. It's just fucking wild.
There needs to be checks and balances. I'm not saying that there is not, but it's situational, right? So like we touched on in the beginning, DV, that is a very, very broad domestic violence, right? Couples are going to argue.
Yeah.
Now, when the cops come and they have to determine who the aggressor is and this and that, and it's something that's so minor. Oh, she has a red mark on her hand or whatever it is. And then that person is convicted of that and they lose their rights for the rest of their life. That's a problem.
How does it go perfect? How do they get it perfect?
Dude, there's so many situations where cops have gone to a domestic violence call. The husband goes to fucking jail. And then the fucking cop is now texting and sexting the fucking victim. The victim. Dude, fuck that shit. Like, bro, there's so many fucking...
And that's abuse of power, right? That's
it goes
abuse of public trust.
And there's a lot of that shit.
I'm sure it's super prevalent. The other side of that coin is I'm like, I also... Assuming that you have a police force that is appointed by a trusted individual who has due diligence in their appointees, like I like the idea of some discretion. Hey, buddy, like took it a little too far, but well, I'm not going to push it to where I could, or whatever. Or on the other side of that coin, some discretion overextends, and maybe somebody they catch a case that is way beyond what it should have been. That's why we have the check and the balance of the judicial system and I just think that, but it's so flawed at every level.
It is, and we're seeing it right now with Trump, dude. That is just makes you want to fucking hate the whole system.
And so it's like, and so that's and almost maybe that gets to the heart of the issue is there any level of governance that we have, whether it be at local, at the criminal justice, in our judicial system, all the way up? Is there anything that's not so flawed that you know what I mean?
We're so far
gone.
Yeah, well, I feel like Gish's daughter, 12 years old, got completely I mean, justice was not served in that situation.
But yeah, based off of what we're hearing, I totally agree.
And I think there's a lot of that goes on.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people that are convicted in this country that are wrongly convicted.
Absolutely.
Matter of fact, I know we're getting a little long-winded here on this, but I don't watch a lot of TV, but last week my wife's like, hey, you need to watch this Dateline. And it was actually here in Idaho, Twin Falls. This girl was raped and murdered, and they called in a group of her friends because obviously that's what they do. You know, they try to see who was last with those people.
Yeah.
Compare stories.
And these fucking detectives talked this dude into committing that he did the crime, and he did fucking 10 years, and DNA ended up clearing this guy, right?
So they basically convinced him, we're going to charge you with this because we have all of this evidence. So you may as well cop to it.
Yes.
It'll be better for you if you cop to it.
And this dude did like 10 years in prison before he was cleared by the Idaho Innocence Project. And they convinced him that he did the crime.
That's crazy.
And so they got him to admit that he did it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
They fed him just enough. Just like I was saying, they could feed your son.
Yeah.
You know,
they planted those ideas.
Yeah.
Dude, those cops, honestly, one of them died. He had died of like, he's since retired, became the mayor of the city. And then got like, he died at like an early age, like 60 years old of,
asshole cancer, hopefully.
No, fuck, I wish, because it would have been painful. But he died of like some mental, where people forget shit. What is that called?
Oh, dementia.
Yeah. So he ended up dying of that. But dude, they should have fucking went back and criminally
Charged.
the other living detective. They should have fucking criminally charged that guy.
Yeah.
For talking this dude into something that he didn't do.
Yeah, they're just trying to make an easy way out and just be like,
bro. And I think there's a lot of that goes on.
Oh,
you know,
does.
and I we can go on and on about that.
Dude, I honestly, we could kick this all day long.
But I honestly think after you have served your time, and if it's not a violent crime where you're out there committing crimes, I think that you should be able to have your rights restored to own firearms.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Unless you're a pedophile.
Yeah, well, and what he's saying is it's situational.
Yeah, it's situational.
Yeah.
It's just important to say.
It is important to say. I mean, they may
I
have.
think Mark Wahlberg actually had a felony conviction years ago in his childhood, like
No
18. You'd have to look it up, but I believe so. And they've denied every single motion.
Let's be real clear. We don't know what we're talking about.
No.
He's got a lot of money and lawyers.
No, but I
We love
followed
Mark
this.
Wahlberg.
I did follow this. Mark Wahlberg literally is a convicted felon and cannot own firearms. And I think he's got it expunged, and they still won't allow him to own firearms. So correct me if I'm wrong. We can look that up.
Yeah,
but
I don't know. Is he liberal?
I don't think so.
No guns for him. I'm just kidding. Well, I will say this. We can beat this subject to death, but we can also end a podcast on a lovely story.
All right.
If you guys would like that.
Let's wrap it up on a high note.
Let's wrap it up on a high note. Now, this is like a good and bad story. This is kind of sad, but it's also a wonderful story. And
we're like an hour 20, so like.
All right, well, we'll read fast.
Yeah, read fast.
All right, cool. 85-year-old Idaho woman shoots and kills home invader and survives multiple gunshots. Did you guys hear about this?
No.
All right, so this lady is bar none probably
the most badass grandma
savage
ever.
grandma in the world. An 85-year-old Idahoan woman has been cleared of any charges as prosecutors say she acted in justifiable self-defense when she shot and killed a man who invaded her home. Bingham County prosecutors report that on March 13th, Derek Condon broke into the home of 85-year-old Christine Jenahan? I don't know. I'm butchering it. Christine's a savage. While she slept, she awoke to Condon pointing a gun and flashlight in her face. The intruder then handcuffed Christine and held her at gunpoint while he questioned her about where the valuables were.
What?
It gets better. Condon is believed to have struck Christine, because I can't pronounce her last name, with the gun at least once. As Condon was rummaging through other rooms of the house, he discovered Christine's disabled son sleeping in another room. Condon threatened to kill her multiple times throughout the invasion and attack. As Condon searched the basement for other valuables, Christine dragged the chair she was handcuffed to into a separate room and retrieved a .357 Magnum revolver.
What a
savage
badass.
She then returned to where Condon had left her and hid the gun between couch cushions. When Condon returned upstairs and again threatened her life, Christine pulled out the .357 from its hiding place and shot Condon twice. Condon returned fire with a 9mm handgun and struck Christine multiple times in her abdomen, leg, arm, and chest.
Oh my gosh.
It gets better. Christine lay on the floor, handcuffed to the chair, bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds for nearly 10 hours before she was found. Condon died from his injuries. Christine survived the attack and the gunshot wounds. The Bingham County prosecutor in this case had to say, This case presents an easy analysis of self-defense and justifiable homicide. Let's just stop and think about that. This 85-year-old lady,
what a baller,
was shot multiple times.
She had a will to live.
Killed that motherfucker.
And a will to fight.
And she lived for 10 hours with gunshot wounds in her body before she was found. So I will say, now, terrible she had to experience that at 85.
Terrible.
But I will say this. I think that if there was a person in the world that deserves a badass trophy, it would be this lady.
Yeah, that's not a participation trophy. You won.
You won.
You won.
You won. And the fact that she handcuffed, brought herself to another room, got her gun, went back and just waited. And as soon as he came back in, boom, boom, took her gunshots like a straight up savage.
Yeah, that's baller.
Laid there.
I want to meet this lady.
Handled it. I seriously, if there's a GoFundMe, someone please link it on one of our social medias. You know, we'd love to help out with that. She is an absolute savage.
I wonder if they still have her firearm or if they cleared it and it's back. Because if not, I'd like to give her one.
Yeah, no, seriously, dude. Like
we can find out.
Yeah. Truly, will to survive, justifiable homicide, and just absolute savage. Like I read that story the other day and was just like, yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Those are good stories that need to be shared.
Horrified
Yep,
she had to
absolutely.
experience that. No one should ever have to experience that level of fear, but like she didn't take it.
No.
She handled her shit like a boss.
Yeah.
So that's my feel good / shitty story to end the segment.
Thanks for sharing that one.
Isn't that great?
Alrighty, y'all. No Quarter Pod, Instagram, all the socials, YouTube. Please follow us, like us, share. Subscribe.
Help us grow this platform because we got so much more to dive into.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for the future podcasts. They're going to be exciting as we continue to grow and lock in our technical difficulties.
Yep. It's Monday. This will be out Wednesday. It's Tuesday. It'll be out tomorrow.
All right.
Alrighty, y'all.
Later.
We're out.